The Hoop Heads Podcast is brought to you by Head Start Basketball.
Hello and welcome to the 37th edition of the Coach's Corner Roundtable on the Hoop Heads Podcast. Each episode of the Coach's Corner Roundtable will feature our all-star lineup of guests answering a single basketball question. A new Coach's Corner Roundtable will drop around the 15th of each month. January's Roundtable question is, if you could recommend one book for other coaches to read in 2022, what would it be and why? Our coaching lineup this month includes Erik Buehler from Chatfield High School, Tyler Coston from PGC Basketball, Joe Harris from Lake Chelan High School, Liz Kay from Wahconah High School, Peter Lonergan from Basketball Australia, Matthew Raidbard, the author of Lead Like a Pro, Nate Sanderson from Thrive on Challenge and Mount Vernon High School, Nick Schauf from Monticello High School, Don Showalter from USA Basketball, Joe's Decision from Unleashed Potential, and John Wilkham, the author of Walk-On Warrior. Hey Hoopheads, I wanted to take a minute to shout out our partners and friends at Dr. Dish Basketball. Their Dr. Dish shooting machines are undoubtedly the most advanced and user-friendly machines on the market. Sign up now for their Virtual Camp 2.0 featuring 10 days of workouts with pro trainers from the Dr. Dish family. Learn more at drdishbasketball.com and follow their incredible content at Dr. Dish B-Ball on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Mention the Hoopheads podcast and save an extra $300 on the Dr. Dish Rebel, All-Star, and CT models. Visit drdishbasketball.com for details. That's a great deal, Hoopheads. Get your Dr. Dish shooting machine today.
This is Kip Ione, head men's basketball coach at Willamette University, founder of Teams of Men, and you're listening to the Hoop Heads Podcast.
Prepare like the pros with the all-new Fast Draw and Fast Scout. Fast Draw has been the #1 play diagramming software for coaches for years. You'll quickly see why Fast Model Sports has the most compelling and intuitive basketball software out there. For a limited time, Fast Model is offering Hoopheads listeners 15% off Fast Draw and Fast Scout. Just use the code HHP15 at checkout to grab your discount, and you'll be on your way to more efficient game prep and improved communication with your team. Fast Model also has new coaching content every week on its blog, plus play and drill diagrams on its play bank. Check out the links in the show notes for more. Fast Model Sports is the best in basketball. Are you tired of overpaying for your video and analytics platform? Well, it's time to check out QuickCut.com, a platform built by coaches for coaches. QuickCut is undeniably more affordable. It's all cloud-based and comes packed with features to help high schools and youth programs store, share, and analyze game film. Make the switch, get double the storage, and save your program up to 50% on the fastest-growing video editing system in the country. For more information or to request a free trial, visit quickcut.com/basketball. That's QWIKCUT.com. Please enjoy this roundtable episode of the Hoopheads Podcast, and once you're finished listening, please give the show a 5-star rating and review after you subscribe on your favorite podcast app. If you're a basketball coach at any level, please check out our Hoopheads Coaching Mentorship Program. You'll get matched with one of our experienced head coaches and develop a relationship that will take your coaching, your team, your program, and your mindset to another level. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at HoopheadsPod for the latest updates on episodes, guests, and events from the Hoopheads Pod. Let's hear from our coaches about which books they think should definitely make your reading list for 2022. Erik Buehler, Chatfield Senior High School, Littleton, Colorado.
Hey, what's going on, Hoopheads? This is Erik Buehler at Chatfield Senior High, and this week we were asked what book would we recommend for a coach to read in 2022. And my new favorite that I read last year that I think everybody should read is Mindset by Carol Dweck. very, very applicable to coaching. It talks a lot about parenting. But if you work with kids, I think you can take a lot from that and you can use it to make yourself a better coach. And there's lots of lessons that you can take to change your kids' mindsets on and view the world and view being a basketball player and how to become a better basketball player. So that's my recommendation, guys. Hope everyone out there is doing good, and talk to you guys later. Bye.
Tyler Coston, PGC Basketball.
Hey all, Tyler Coston here with a book recommendation. I suggest everyone immediately read The Go-Giver. The Go-Giver is an essential mindset. It kind of plays on the idea of being a go-getter, an achiever, a high achiever, in fact. And instead of going out and trying to see what you can go and get for yourself in order to achieve success or achieve your dreams, it really flips that whole concept on its head and says, okay, what are 5 laws for unbelievable impact where you can go out with the mindset to go out and give? And if you do choose to read, I think it will change the way that you approach your coaching, change the way you approach your family, and really change the way I think you'll approach your leadership. One just mind-changing concept is to always offer more in value than you ever take in payment. And I think that concept of always expecting to do more than your share, not your fair share, not as little as it takes, but more than your share, is an unbelievable mindset to model as a leader. Because when those that follow you can imitate that model, it's going to be unbelievable what your team can accomplish. So that's it. I'm Tyler, here to help. The Go-Giver. Check it out, and I hope it helps you.
Joe Harris, Lake Chelan High School, Lake Chelan, Washington.
Hello, Hoopheads. This is Joe Harris from Lake Chelan High School with this month's roundtable question. If you could recommend one book for other coaches to read in 2022, what book would it be and why? I honestly could not just come up with one title, so I'm going to give you 2 of my all-time favorites. The first is Blind Your Ponies by Stanley Gordon West. This is a remarkable book that I've read and reread a number of different times. It's a story about the human spirit and the underdog basketball team in a small town in Montana. In Blind Your Ponies, you'll read about facing and overcoming setbacks in both sport and life. It gets you thinking with hard work and good friends, maybe we can change the tide. And then if you just hang in there and fight, we might just win this thing. The other book that I truly recommend is Unscripted, The Unpredictable Moments That Make Life Extraordinary by Ernie Johnson. One of the best books I've ever read. From the moment you open the cover of Unscripted, you'll find Ernie's passion for life is truly infectious, and his dedication to family and friends is evident throughout each chapter. He talks about struggles, compassion, and so much more that make up everyday life. And I believe after reading Unscripted, you'll come away wanting to make the most of what's been given to you and to cherish your life, no matter where it takes you, especially when it takes you to places you didn't expect at all. Unscripted is a book every parent, coach, or teacher should really have on their shelf. Either of these books will leave you with, people need to have faith and hope, and sometimes athletics can provide both. Appreciate you having me on. Thanks so much.
Liz K. from Wahconah High School in Dalton, Massachusetts.
Hey Hoopheads, it's Liz K. from Wahconah Regional High School in Dalton, Massachusetts. And to answer this month's roundtable question on a book I would recommend in 2022, on the coaching side, I would definitely recommend anything in the What Drives Winning series by Brad Ledbetter. They have several books in the series, but they also have workbooks to go along with it. I've found that they have a lot of practical information and suggestions on building culture and team building within your program. Great stuff. If you're looking for more of the leisurely sit on the beach stuff, I really, as a diehard Duke fan, an ACC fan, I really enjoyed The Legends Club by John Feinstein. Those are 2 great ones. Hope you're all well, and Happy New Year.
Peter Lonergan, Director of High Performance Coach Development for Basketball Australia.
Hi, this is Peter Lonergan from Australia. If I could recommend one book for coaches to read, it'd certainly be The Tough Stuff by Cody Royle. Cody talks about the challenges of being a head coach, some of the pitfalls, some of the things that you've got to be aware of as a head coach that you weren't aware of as an assistant coach. Really easy read, great clarity, and great things to add to your toolbox. So for me, it would be The Tough Stuff from Cody Royle.
Matthew Raidbard, author of Lead Like a Pro.
Hey, Hoophead listeners, this is Matthew Raidbard. Glad to be back here for another Hoopheads Roundtable. Happy New Year to everybody. Hope everybody had a great holiday season. But glad to be back on the podcast talking about a book that I would recommend to everyone to read in 2022. It's a book that I recently finished and really enjoyed. Definitely think everybody should read. It's by Chris Bosch. It's called Letters to a Young Athlete. Really amazingly introspective book where Chris talks about, what he learned during his playing career that he wishes he could tell himself as a young athlete, what he learned from other basketball legends like LeBron and Kobe, the great coaches that he played for like Pat Riley and Coach K. Really gets in depth on a lot of things, talks about, the power and importance of leadership and being a great teammate, working hard, kind of staying on your path, not straying, really acknowledging the importance of being who you are, valuing yourself, listening to your inner voice, but also taming it, understanding that you are your own ally. So just a lot of great stuff in the book. Really recommend it for everybody. I definitely, I'm glad that I had the opportunity to read it. I learned a ton from it that I'm going to be taking with me into my own leadership practice and just how I kind of view myself and everything I'm working towards moving forward. So definitely a valuable read. I encourage everybody listening to go out and pick it up, support Chris and everything he's doing a lot of awesome stuff as well if you read more about him. So Chris Bosch, Letters to a Young Athlete, definitely recommend it for everybody.
Nate Sanderson, Thrive on Challenge.
Hey, Mike, this is Nate Sanderson from Thrive on Challenge. The one book that I would recommend that coaches check out in 2022 actually is not a sports book, but has everything to do with coaching. And that is a book by Dr. Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey, who wrote a book called What Happened to You? And in this book, it's really the story of how traumatic experiences, oftentimes in our childhood and our upbringing, can affect the way that we interact with people and interact with the world as we continue to grow even into adulthood. And what's fascinating about this book and the research behind it is that there are things that get programmed into the brains of our players that we have absolutely no idea that this wiring has taken place that cause some stress responses, their fight or flight mechanisms to trigger in ways that we have no real understanding of because we don't know or aren't aware of the trauma that's happened in their past. And I'll just give you one example. JP Nurbin and I actually used this book for a lot of the content at our transformational coaching retreat in 2021. And we told this story of an elementary school teacher who had a student that refused to read children's books in the third grade. She could read at grade level. She was proficient. It wasn't a learning disability or anything of that nature. But for whatever reason, there were certain books that she just refused to engage in. And so over the course of time, psychologists began to uncover with this young 8-year-old girl what it is that was keeping her, what her fears were that were being triggered when she was asked to read some of these books in class. And it turns out that when her grandmother died, so when she was 3 or 4 years old, she was really close to her grandma. And her grandmother had died, and her family didn't really know how to break the news to her. And so the day after she was gone, a lot of the family was gathered in the house, and nobody had told the young girl what had happened yet. And so one of her aunts grabbed a book that had a story. It was a children's book, and it had a story about a character that dies in the story. And so she sat down with this young girl, and she was reading the story to her. And when she got to that point in the story where the character died, she said, "That's what happened to Grandma. That's why she's not here today." And in that moment, her brain immediately starts to see children's books as a reminder of not necessarily grief, not necessarily even her grandmother, but they see it as a threat because it's associated with the loss of someone close to them. And so that was the thing that was keeping her from being able to engage in reading in her third grade class some 5 years later. Now, there's lots of crazy stories that are like this, but you can see how those patterns can affect us as coaches when we're interacting with players and have no idea what kind of traumatic experiences, big or small, that they've had in their past. And what Dr. Perry and Oprah Winfrey do a great job of in this book is really unpacking, first of all, the research, so it's easier to understand exactly, number one, how the brain works and why this has kind of been part of our survival process. But also for educators, for parents, and for coaches, there's a lot of very applicable and practical solutions and strategies that can help you as a coach to be able to, number one, be a little bit more aware of our own coaching and perhaps some of our own triggers, but also be able to recognize when some of those things happen in the lives of your players and what to do when you stumble upon some traumatic triggers.
Nick Schauf, Monticello High School in Monticello, Iowa.
Hey, everybody. Just wanted to give a shout out to Hoopheads podcast here. Really done a great job, as over the years they've kind of created some great content here. I enjoy listening to them. I've been fortunate to be a part of this podcast in the past and really want to share with you a book that I really enjoy. I think every coach should read. My name is Nick Schauf, currently principal at Monticello High School in Iowa, longtime Snow Valley basketball clinician, a youth coach, and now I'm a former 17-year head coach. So moving into administration, I'm giving up the high school head coaching duties and now just coach a lot of youth teams. But the book I would recommend that coaches read is called Lead for God's Sake by Todd Gongor. It's a powerful book that really has changed my life, not only in coaching, but really in leadership in general. This book is about a coach, actually a basketball coach, that develops a relationship with Joe the janitor and really learns through a lot of different conversations and life experiences what truly is important. I think this book talks about purpose and really in my mission and journey through my own life, it's really changed my purpose. And in that mission that I kind of go through now, I reference this book all the time. This book really puts faith and heart at the forefront of leadership and purpose, and kind of diving into what you think and what your heart thinks and maybe what God thinks. And I have read the book probably around 4 times now, and each time I find a little different nugget and a little different thought to apply to my own life and how I lead. So I really highly recommend Lead for God's Sake.
Don Showalter, USA Basketball.
Hi, Don Showalter here from USA Basketball. The question for this month is, what books would you recommend to coaches and why? I would think one of the first ones I would recommend is a book by Jay Billis, Toughness. For me, that was really a good book just to relate the fact that toughness is so important and how that transcribes over to your players. And I think it gave me some real insight as to the many different facets of what toughness is really like. Of course, Jay does a great job of writing as well. I think the other book I always try to read at some point, usually in the summer before season, is They Call Me Coach by John Wooden. This is an excellent book just to get your frame of mind right, to get your priorities straight as a coach, just to see and make sure that you have things kind of checked off that you need to get done. They Call Me Coach is really informative book, but it's also one that makes you think by Coach John Wooden, and I think that's really one of the most important books that I've read every year. He also has a lot of other books that are really informative and very good as well. So any book by John Wooden, I would certainly recommend. Those are the two that I think would be beneficial for coaches, and coaches would get a lot of help from them, but also would be very interesting to read. Thank you.
Joe's Decision, Unleashed Potential, Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Joe's Decision, Unleashed Potential. This month's question is, if there was one book that you could recommend for other coaches to read in 2022, what would the book be? I would say the book for me that I would recommend for other coaches to read is Why the Best Are the Best by Kevin Eastman. And it was a really hard choice. There are a number of books that I could recommend. But this one is probably at the top of my list for a couple of reasons. First of all, Coach Eastman is a great friend and mentor of mine. I've been working with him and been close to him since he was the assistant coach for the Boston Celtics back in 2008 when they won the World Championship with Doc Rivers. And I've worked closely with Kevin, and I've seen him live the things that are in his book. And he is certainly one that has been around the best of the best. So another reason that I think this is a great book, because this isn't just about athletics or basketball. The lessons in this book that Coach has picked up from the tremendous experience that he has had and the people that he has been around is something that you could take and use in your everyday life. And I really like those kind of books the best because, you know, there's more to life than just basketball and athletics. And this is something that you can apply to all aspects of life. So really the best part about the book and the part that I really use all the time in my professional and personal life are the 25 power words of champions that Coach goes into great detail in this book. And I think if you from time to time look at those 25 words and read how Coach has applied them in different aspects, not only in his professional life, but personal life, I think there are definitely things that you can take and use and are very beneficial. For instance, you know, the first one in the list, he talks about truth. You know, and that's one of the things that as a coach and now as a player development coach and working with players all over the country and the world, that's one thing that I live by in terms of my coaching ability. You know, we always talk about telling players the truth and being honest with people. And, you know, one thing that Coach always talks about, and he mentions in his book, you know, people say that the truth hurts. You hear people say that, but it's not. Coach Eastman has a different take on that. And he says the truth doesn't hurt, the truth helps. So if you follow that, like by telling people the truth, you're not hurting them, but you're actually helping them in whether it's a game of basketball or the game of life. So that's one of those things he talks about, you know, taking the truth, living the truth, and telling the truth. And I think, you know, as you develop relations with people, that is something that I try to do. The better relationship that you have with someone, the more truthful you can be with them. So that's just one of the words he talks about that I think is really, really big. Also talks about circles and who are the people who you surround yourself with. You know, I think that's something that he has done through his career and his life that has helped him to succeed, is by being around successful people and keeping your circle close and, you know, not allowing people who are going to be negative into your circle, who have a negative impact on you and your life or your career. So that's something that I think can be applied to basketball and life also. Also talks about competing, being able to compete. I think in any aspect of life, whether it's athletics or a career, you have to learn how to compete. You know, and we have this discussion all the time. And, you know, Coach Eastman goes into detail in his book about what that looks like. I think sometimes you have to show people what competition looks like and what it feels like to compete. I think that's the only way they truly can figure out, you know, how to be competitive in all aspects, whether it's athletics or in their profession. And also urgency. I got this, you know, I use this a lot when I speak for USA Basketball, their coach academies, or anywhere I speak. I talk about the sense of urgency. Not only having a sense of urgency on the floor for players and coaches, but having a sense of urgency in life. And that doesn't mean having a sense of urgency that you're out of control. I think it has to be a controlled urgency. But having a sense of urgency in everything that you do. You know, I just think that's really, really important that, you know, a lot of people go through life and they never have a sense of urgency. And I don't think you can be at the top of your profession or the top of your athletic career if you don't have some type of sense of urgency to follow through and do the things that you want to accomplish. And then a couple more things that he talks about of the 25 words would be talent. Okay. Talent. He talks about talent a lot. And I use this a lot when working with players. Like there's certain things that you doesn't require any talent at all. Okay. You can overachieve if you do the little things that don't require any basketball ability, or same thing in life, just doing the little things and being detail oriented. And then you combine that with talent, and then you really, really have something. So that's another key word that he uses a lot. Another one that I would say is accountability. When I coach and we do player development, we hold people accountable. I think I talk about this also a lot, and I got a lot of this from Coach Eastman too. That you have to hold people accountable. I know he talks about when he went to the LA Clippers as vice president of basketball operations after he left the Celtics. He joined Doc Rivers. And he talked about, the first day in his office, he wanted to change not only the culture in the office, but he was interested in holding people accountable. Okay. And I think that will take you a long way because people and players will do what you allow them to do. But I think for growth in any career or any profession, you gotta hold yourself accountable. And if you're in a leadership position, you have to hold other people accountable. So here again, there's so much in this book I take with me all the time. I keep this book. I refer back to it all the time. I know, in my meetings with Coach Eastman, he's a learn-it-all. And, the thing that's amazing to me is, he's such a great leader and has been around the best of the best. And he's always still willing to learn, whether it's from me or someone else. He carries a book with him with these words in it, and he has a notebook with him all the time. If he comes across something from someone that he feels can make him a better person or a better coach or whatever the case may be, he will write it down. And that's something that I have learned to do a long time ago, is to take from the best and refer to those notes. So that's why I really like this book, and I think this is so much more than a book about basketball. It's a book about life. Why the Best Are the Best by Kevin Eastman. So I highly recommend this one just to use from someone who has experienced being around the best, and he has documented what are the things that these people do to make themselves the best. So I highly recommend this book. It's a great read, and it's something that can be looked at over and over and used over and over again. Thank you very much.
John Wilkham, author of Walk On Warrior.
Hey everybody, this is John Wilkham, author, coach, and all around just hoop heads enthusiast. Wanted to weigh in this month's roundtable regarding books. I'm going to throw out 3 recommendations today, really around 3 topics. One for coaches and about coaching. Next one centered on just mentality and toughness. And the third one from a player's perspective. So first book I want to recommend is My Life on a Napkin by Rick Majerus. Everybody knows the background on Majerus and kind of what made him unique and kind of the wild personality and just the quirks that made him such an interesting guy. This book is awesome because I think there's a lot of books that are just about basketball, about X's and O's, and maybe about seasons and recaps and kind of that journey. I feel like there's just so much to this book that encapsulates who Rick was, and it's enjoyable because it's just so authentic to his personality and who he was as an individual. Second book I want to recommend is about mentality. The book is called Where Men Win Glory by John Krakauer. I love John Krakauer's books. He wrote Into the Wild and a few others, but this book is about Pat Tillman, and Pat Tillman walked away from an NFL career to join the Army and was eventually killed in Afghanistan, serving our country. It's a phenomenal story. There's so much to that story that I didn't remember, understand. And it's one of those books that I read over the holidays and just couldn't put down. Last but not least, want to touch base on players and a book written from a player's mentality. And I guess shameless plug, but it's my own book, Walk On Warrior. I wrote the book from a true player's perspective, wanted to be authentic about, how I saw the game as a college athlete and what it was like to play at that level. And so whether you're a young coach and kind of want to understand things from that side of the table, or even just how kids think, because the majority of that book was written when I was 19, 20 years old, I'd recommend checking it out. So those are my top 3. Have a good week.
Thanks for checking out this month's Hoopheads Podcast Roundtable. We'll be back next month with another question for our all-star lineup of coaches.
Thanks for listening to the Hoopheads Podcast, presented by Head Start Basketball.